Mezza vacca, mezza cuore mio. That's something my grandmother tells me in her Italian dialect. What she's saying is her heart is 50% pig, 50% cow, and 50% human. Right, you laughed, okay. Now, if you do the math, that adds up to 150%, which is impossible. But hey, her heart really is part pig, part cow, and part herself. You know, it's all jokes when she says menza this, menza that, but you know, the inspiration for that little quote comes from a time in our lives that really wasn't so funny. And now I'm picturing a photo that was taken the day of my high school graduation. I'm dressed up in my blue Oxford shirt, my fake Ray-Bans, she's wearing her Talbots with a Vera Bradley thing underneath, you know, the whole works. But when I saw that photo now, I never would have thought how sick she was at the time. Look at this photo. You see she's bent over a little bit. She usually has these red velvety lips, and they were just this gray, pinkish, washed out, and her face was just pale. And that was the appearance of a woman at the time who had gone for many, many walks around the block, and over time just stopped doing it until one day she tripped and blamed it on a Shih Tzu dog that was being walked on the other side of the street by her neighbor. Now you laugh, but that was her, I guess, polite way of ignoring the fact that something really was wrong with her heart. And we didn't buy her story that the Shih Tzu tripped her. And I remember the day before she left for Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. You know, I wished her well, I gave her a hug, and I couldn't really say much after that. In fact, I don't think I said anything after that because I felt like my heart was the broken one. So the surgery happened. It was July 14th, 2014. It was the day that I got out of my shift at Five Below, America's finest luxury dollar store. And I went to a pizza parlor with my brother. And we were waiting on a phone call from my mother. We were waiting, we got our pizza, and then the phone vibrated. And I asked my mother, well, how did the surgery go? And I could tell by the slight pause in her voice that I wasn't going to like the answer. Now, when the surgeons went in to go do surgery for my grandmother, they had to replace her mitral valve, and they were going to put a pig valve in. But when they went in, they realized that her aortic valve wasn't working too hot either. So they had to bring in a cow valve for that. Now, my mom's a nurse practitioner, so she boiled it all down for me. She said, you know, Matt, your grandmother's heart was working at 20% of what it should have been working at. Now, I don't think anyone needs to be a nurse practitioner to realize that anything that's 80% not working isn't a great sign. But 2 weeks later, I got to visit her. And I walked into the hospital room, and she was there, and she was so thin, she was like this tiny little bird, but she was there. And she was resting peacefully. So I sat down with my aunt, my mom, my uncle, who had been waiting there. They had been there for the surgery, they had been there for the recovery, and here I was strolling in. And I was asking them about their experiences over the past 2 weeks, and they were telling me details that I don't think I could have handled back when I made that phone call or my mom called me. And they were telling me about these small moments that I realized what true loving was. And true loving wasn't boxes of chocolates, wasn't a big teddy bear from the store downstairs in the hospital, wasn't a dozen roses, but true loving were these quiet moments, these silent moments that aren't glamorous. That's what true loving is. And you want to know what loving is? Well, I'll tell you what I saw love in those moments. There was love in every moment that my grandfather waited back home in silence. No TV on, no radio, no newspaper, just in silence and solidarity, waiting for the phone to ring to get an update from my mother, for his wife that he had been married to for 55 years. There was love in every moment that my aunt, my mom, and my uncle waited by my grandmother's side, keeping a vigil, sleeping in a cot, sleeping in those weird reclining chairs near the bedsides in hospitals, sleeping in the corner of the room, sleeping in a bed that the nurses brought in because they refused to sleep anywhere else but at her side. There was love every evening when my uncle, my mom, and my aunt would take my grandmother's socks off because she was too warm at 3 o'clock in the morning, put them back on at 3:05, and take them off again at 3:10. And there was love in every meal that my aunt's boyfriend brought them so they didn't have to eat that hospital food. And there was love in every moment that my grandmother never decided to resign from her physical state when she was most vulnerable with tubes and IVs and buzzers and beepers inside of her. She never gave up. That was loving. Those quiet, not glamorous, gritty moments of loving. Now, that was loving that my family gave her and she gave back. And I see those moments of loving today too. When she's walking around her house, she's doing laps to build up endurance for the summer. Because one day, she's gonna walk around that block again, sans the Shih Tzu. She's gonna walk around many times, and yeah, her heart may be 50% pig, 50% cow, and 50% her, but 150% of it is true loving. Thank you.